going to be talking transmission with your host, Joe. And we're going to let you take over, Joe, for the next 50 minutes.
Thank you, Francisco. Appreciate it. And I think we all are missing a little St. Elmo's and the, the cocktail sauce and the shrimp. But hey, this is great too. We get to connect around the world, and you guys have been doing a great job. I too have been watching, and it has been very fun and informative. And I think to see you guys evolve this technology so rapidly. So Hollinger Engineering, gentlemen, transmission so significant and important to any racing program. It's great to meet you guys, Leigh, Dana, Bill. This is an area that, you make the power, you got to get the power to the ground, shift those gears as rapidly as is possible. So take us where you want to take us as we begin our journey, learning a little bit about your engineering, your product, and why it is so important and why so many good teams have used it.
Racing gearboxes in general, I guess, are nothing new. But Hollinger's been, in the business for nearly 50 years. So they've been kind of in the beginnings of the whole sequential racing gearbox, segment of the market in sports car racing primarily. But sequential is now, I'd say, because of a lot of different factors and how sports car racing has evolved in the last 5 years, maybe 10. Sequential shift gearboxes are becoming more the norm. So I think Hollinger's been kind of involved at the beginning. So it's, sequential is the only thing we do anymore, just about. Now it's just a matter of whether or not it's going to be something that you shift with your hand or shift with the paddle. And that paddle shift aspect is becoming a little bit more approachable for some people now because of the electronics that is available to, motorsports customers.
Certainly it seems fun, feels like a video game. Bill, owner of Rader Motorsports, you're putting this into application and you're using the product. Talk a little bit about why it's been beneficial to you, helping you pick up ET lap time, etc. And let's try to formulate who our potential customers are. Bill.
Yeah, the whole nice thing with sequential gearboxes is the speed of the shifting. When you have the paddle shift and the proper shift strategy and everything made up, then it eliminates a lot of mistakes that can happen, missed shifts, over revs, that kind of stuff. It's pretty much the strategies and the setup is good. You can't really hurt the gearbox or the engine. That's always good. Customers that we are interested in doing this stuff. The road race guys do it. We do a lot of road race cars, hill climb cars, even straight line drag race guys. I've done a lot of Hollinger conversions for a lot of guys are doing some of that stuff. So
very interesting, Hollinger. Leigh, as the engineering director, you're building the product and putting it into these race cars. It's obviously something that you're proud of, but let's talk about nuts and bolts here. Someone might spend a little bit more on the product, but there is a reason to do that. Walk us through.
Well, look, our products, we start at the very beginning with the best materials, very high strength castings that are all heat treated to T6 specifications. That helps both with machining and also strength of the castings and that sort of stuff. But even if we go back down to the raw billet material, we have that all specially made for ourselves. It starts off as a vacuum arc remelted steel that's basically same as what the aircraft industry uses, but we source it for ourselves. So yeah, we try and save some money. But starting with those very good products at the beginning and then working all the way through, making sure all our designs are correct. We spend a lot of time, years developing a design before we put it to market. And then basically everything we do, we try to make it as consistent as possible. So we use the same heat treatment facilities always. We use we try and do as much as possible in-house. So everything from turning, machining, milling, gear cutting, shot peening, everything is basically done in-house. All our grinding is done in-house. So everything we can keep control of. Now, that makes the products possibly slightly more expensive, but they're very consistent, which means we can then plan our designs and our capacity of the transmission very easily, because we know exactly what everything's done, because we do it all the same way every time. So that means, yes, we can manufacture a product that's more reliable than a lot of our competition and more consistent, basically. And we put a lot of effort into the hard machining of all our products. So after heat treatment, all the gear teeth are ground. This gives us better profiles, more consistent pitching, all those sorts of things. Even our cramble and pinions that we do, they're all hard finished after heat treatment. So heat treatment distortion and things like that never come into it. So means, once again, everything's more consistent and we can plan around that. And if you buy gear from us 10 years ago, we can still manufacture the exact same gear today. And that's the way we also plan looking forwards. So it means basically we can still service all our products that are very, well, look, we've been manufacturing transmissions for nearly 50 years. So transmissions we were selling back to BMW back in the early 1990s for their world touring cars. We still manufacture those components and service those gearboxes. So even it means our transmissions have a very long life, and that makes it more cost effective.
Absolutely. Dana, what are you seeing with your customers as the Americas manager? And you know, we already heard Bill talk about, you know, many different applications, maybe even drag racing, certainly a lot of the club racers out there, but higher level machinery. What are people looking for when they come to you? And why is Hollinger a good match in terms of shifting speed and performance?
Well, I think what we find a lot of lately is customers are building cars that have more and more power. And that in and of itself is creating limitation. You know, the standard gearboxes have limitations. So if they want to take their car out into a track, toy, it's very easy to outpower what the stock driveline has in it. So we find that we're doing a lot of upgrades to cars that are converting their cars to a full-time track piece. So we have to take our universal style racing gearboxes and then adapt them to various vehicles. So, you know, the popular cars in the US are, you know, front engine rear wheel drive V8 stuff like Mustangs, Camaros, things like that. And we also do a lot of European sports cars. We do a lot of work with Porsche applications and BMW as well. So we have a pretty wide range of inline gearboxes for the V8 stuff, and we also have a lot of transaxles that are becoming more and more popular these days. So we do a lot of mid-engine transaxle work for fabricated cars, kit cars, or we also do conversions for cars that were already a transaxle application. They're just making a lot more power. So, you know, a Porsche Turbo, for example, that is normally in the 400 to 500 horsepower range is now making 800 plus track car, and they need something that's going to hold up. So we've got basically gearboxes that have been in some applications are essentially a bolt in place of original boxes, like in the case of a Porsche 997 Cup car, for example. The original factory gearboxes can be taken out, and the new complete Hollinger box can be built in its place. And mounts and oil fittings and water fittings, everything is all compatible.
So a plug and play replacement that is going to be able to handle whatever horsepower you throw at it. And I think that's something that maybe people don't consider with the way it seems like, and feel free to correct me, Leigh or Bill, it just seems like you can unlock a lot of the potential that is in a car easier these days. I think we spent the last couple of days learning that making the horsepower can be at the tip of the keyboard, but ultimately it's got to run through that transmission, and you're going to need a unit that can handle it. And if you don't do that, well, there's the damage you were talking about, Bill, or problems you could set yourself back. And so this seems like a plug and play solution.
For a lot of applications, yes, that's correct. As Dana said, for the Porsches, we have quite a few solutions, even all-wheel drive solutions for some of the hill climb guys and that sort of thing. And then obviously for a lot of the Chev or Ford powered guys out there, Mustangs, Camaros, those sorts of things, we've got complete bell housings and transmission setups basically. So it may not be completely plug and play for all of them, but it's very, very close. We also, I mean, basically there's almost no car now that we can't put a transmission in. Everything from Lamborghinis, Porsches, Vipers, all those sorts of things, through to off-road buggies, Dakar cars, rally cars. It's basically, we can pretty well cover the complete field of motorsport.
Let's talk a little bit about those V8 muscle cars. And not that I don't like and appreciate and love the exotics, I certainly do. But for every one Lamborghini, there's thousands of powerful Mustangs and Camaros. And I see potential for those people who want to upgrade their driveline. So what are we talking to put a sequential gearbox in, say, a powerful Mustang or Challenger or Camaro? Is how achievable is that?
Well, I think depending on what you're after, I mean, most of these guys they're spending quite a bit of money on an engine. You'll have to spend to get a proper motorsport gearbox. You'll still have to spend a lot of money. They're not inexpensive. I think, let's say, for example, a Mustang. To put a sequential gearbox with a gear lever for shifting in a Mustang, it's probably, by the time you're done with the proper flywheel, clutch, drive shaft, everything else, you're probably in the $1,000 range. But on a car that might be, pushing six figures in investment, it's, especially when it comes to some of the more serious engine builds. It's crucial to get a gearbox that you can rely on. And
that makes sense.
Some upfront money that you'll spend on a gearbox like a Hollinger pays dividends down the line, because you'll only have to buy it once, and it will last you, instead of having to buy something that might be not quite up to the task and having to service it constantly, or miss an event, or even if you're just spending money on a track day and you've put the car out there and spent some money on tires and gas and hotels and things like that, spend a weekend at the track, and you find yourself on the and had it underneath it trying to figure out what's going on. There's a significant amount of money lost for you don't get to run. So there's, as Leigh had mentioned earlier in the conversation, there's probably some initial money up front that might be higher with the Hollinger, but the overall cost of ownership is significantly lower because they hold their value.
Well, and isn't that the lesson that hopefully people have learned from other people making that mistake throughout sport, right? Like, that's a story that has gone on since racing began. Like, excuse me for,
Sure.
Out on something, and then I had all kinds of problems, not to mention the time investment to go in and pull it out. Now, we do have a question, and we ask people to submit questions in the comment section. Those of you out there on the World Wide Web, EPARTRADE.com. Derek has been watching all day long, has been absolutely great. What's up, Derek? But your audio, Dana, broke up just as you said the number for the Mustang. And I know
okay.
a lot of these Mustang guys, Camaro guys, the idea of a sequential gearbox is really appealing because you have best of all worlds. You have your power and muscular feeling with the efficiency and shifting that you can get with an exotic. So tell us that number again. Audio broke up a little bit. We can hear you, but just that one happened to be on the negative side.
Yeah, so a 6-speed sequential for a Mustang starting point is right around 18,000.
Certainly there are people spending that kind of money on their cars, especially racing cars that are out there involved in some sort of sport, just the tire bill. Bill, you know about that obviously very well.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is an expensive sport, and if anybody thinks any different going into racing, they're going to be pretty disappointed. What I like to say about the Hollinger, the choice, making a choice between another brand of gearbox and the Hollinger gearboxes. Whenever I'm trying to sell somebody, recommend somebody on a complete gearbox change, sometimes the racers are really well informed. They say, well, what about this brand of box, and what about this brand of box? And my answer is always pretty simple. Those guys, the other guys, I don't know too many other manufacturers in the country that have a representation in the country like Hollinger does. And if I need parts for any gearboxes, it's usually a day away at the most. We've had to get stuff from Australia. It's been maybe a week. So the level of support that we get from the guys at Hollinger is just second to none. And that really is a big part of it. And most of the time, we don't need parts for these things. They just work. Usually they get damaged when they first install them in a car, and they're working on fine tuning all the shift strategy. And that's usually when a little damage happens in a car that hasn't had a gearbox like this before. But once it's set up, everything's great.
Leigh, let's expand on that a little bit. What sets Hollinger apart from the competition? I know you've got a lot of experience in V8 supercars, for instance, a few years back. Those are amazing machines, not lightweight by any means. Talk a little bit about your company and the experience of Hollinger and what sets you apart from the others.
Well, the fact that we have been around for a very, very long time. I mean, we made our first sequential gearbox for an OEM back in the early 90s for BMW. We also did a lot of the front-wheel drive stuff for the British touring cars back then as well. And it's the consistency stuff that I know it sort of sounds like I'm harping on, but the fact that we still manufacture parts for gearboxes we made 30 years ago. And that doesn't mean it's 30-year-old technology. We just make sure that everything we do is consistent so that we can, it's backwards compatible as far as usability for those customers who've got the old gearboxes. And then also the new stuff. Yes, we are constantly developing new products and that sort of thing. We make sure that the products are developed with a long life and good serviceability. All our products are made so that you can service them with standard tools. You don't have to buy special tools or special bearings or special seals and all that sort of stuff. We make sure that no matter where you are in the world, because realistically, Australia is actually a very small market for us. It's a worldwide company, so everything we sell, you have to be able to service everywhere. So you don't want to have to buy a special bearing from us that you could have to wait a week for to get from the other side of the world. You can just go down to your normal bearing suppliers and things like that. So we try to make sure in the design that everything is designed for serviceability and cost-effective racing, basically. Yes, there's a little bit more upfront, but in the long run, I can guarantee you our transmissions cost less to run than other manufacturers. It's just the way, that's sort of the mentality we've always had.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. Consistency, reliability, serviceability, and once it's in, you're not going to have to take it in and out many times over, so you can spend your time racing or driving, etc. What's hot right now, Leigh? What's popular? Dana, feel free to jump in on this. Also, we're in 2020. It's been a weird year to say the least, but the car aficionados and certainly the racers are using this time wisely. They're upgrading their drive lines. They're upgrading their everything, frankly, the way it's looking. What's hot? What's popular? What are you selling a lot of?
I think the two big things are mid-engine transaxles, and the inline gearboxes for BMW. So E46 M3 is a very popular track toy, and somewhat more affordable than it used to be. So we're doing quite a few gearbox packages for the M3s. That's probably that one, is probably the most consistent as far as an inline box, the front engine rear wheel drive. But certainly the transaxle side of the business has really exploded in the last 18 months. So not something that Hollinger ever expected to take off as well as it did. So we're spending a lot of time developing transaxles for circuit racing, and now the off-road side of things is starting to come into play too, and we can probably expand on that a bit. But the off-road side of things is beginning to get underway.
Well, that makes sense, especially with the mid-engine transaxle, because I don't think you want to be pulling that thing in and out any more than you have to. Bill, dive in on that with, some of the types of cars that your customers are coming through. I know Dana just mentioned some of the off-road, but, list some vehicles that you might recommend putting the Hollinger box in.
Yeah, my business is kind of built around mostly Porsche stuff, so that's a big part of what I do. But I also have been involved in several Lamborghini and Audi applications. And, I know that they make. I recently tried to. I'm working on a deal to do a BMW box, like Dana mentioned. We're working on one of those. There's been some, or those Dana, the Scion gearbox cars that needed that. We have some guys that were working on doing a sequential for that. I think there's some pretty cool Subaru stuff out there. Was that what it was?
Yeah. I think, because of the popularity on the media of the Mustang GT4, which uses a Hollinger gearbox and paddle shift system, people that have Mustangs have seen that what a paddle shifted, Mustang can do on the track. So we have a decent number, consistent number of that type of gearbox packages into Mustangs. Again, like I said, it's not an inexpensive investment, but it is an investment, something that you could we've had customers buy gearboxes and pass them from one car to the next because they last that long. So, but yeah, Mustang track cars are always out there.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dana. I work on a lot of those. I work on a lot of those Mustang gearboxes for Dana, and they just hold up really well. Seems like they never need too many major parts, so it's good stuff.
Well, I think we're going into John Kilroy had been saying throughout the weekend, and the gentleman from Racer, that we're about to experience like a great reset or a reawakening in motorsports as everybody is able to get back out there. And when that happens, the last thing you're going to want is to have some sort of gearbox problem that sidelines you again. People are going to want to race. And to me, it's very exciting. So Leigh and Dana, obviously, Bill, jump in on this one in terms of prospective customers who are trying to figure out how to select what is right for them. Tick off a couple of, some methodology on how to select whether or not the Hollinger box is going to be right for you, or which to go with. Lean in on that.
Sure. Well, I think when we get an inquiry with a prospective customer, obviously the first and foremost question is what sort of car they have, what they intend to do with it, what type of racing are we dealing with. Once we have a picture of what the guy is looking for, how much power the car will be making, and then what their expectations are for how often they use it, that sort of thing. We can get a gauge on what Hollinger gearbox would be the suitable application. And then we can kind of give them some ballpark numbers on what kind of investment we're dealing with. Just as a side note, all the Hollinger gearboxes are built to order for each customer. So the choice of gear ratios, and if it's a transaxle, how the differentials are set up and adjusted, all those things are completely open and left to the discussions we have with customers, so we can kind of customize just what they're looking for. So, a guy who's building a car for a standing mile race is not going to have the same requirements as a guy who's driving a local car club, track days. So there's a lot of, because Hollinger has so much customization available as far as ratios go, virtually every gearbox style that Hollinger makes has a very big range of ratios available. So we can suit all engine types, RPM ranges, and demands on the car for what type of racing it is. So all those things kind of play into it. So we can work with the customer to come up with a package that we would then recommend. And, if it's something that, it's not a small investment, but we are unique in the sense that we're not going to force something down their throat. We don't have an off-the-shelf package that may not be right for them, but we do it because, we won't want to sell them something that's not right. So we have the ability of customizing virtually everything. So we feel that's an advantage with Hollinger over others too. A very wide range of customization.
No, that's exciting. Premium brand, nowadays that's what people want. They want reliability. And as Leigh was saying, what about, let's talk R&D with the company. Leigh, you mentioned this is a long-standing company, been around for a long time. Stand by product, continue to service customers. That's what people want as things are revamped. You want to be able to rely upon your company and your business. At the same time, new cars are coming to market. I can't help but think about the mid-engined Corvette, transaxle, and all the new around that vehicle, and it's going to be popular. And how do you guys handle a situation like that when you see there's something coming, it's new, it's fresh, it's popular, or it's going to be, people are going to want it, they're going to want to race it, you want to be in that product line? Is that something you guys attack right away? Do you wait and test the market? Do you see what the factory OE stuff is? What are your thoughts about that kind of that project as new cars hit the market?
It varies from car to car a lot. For instance, we do a lot of work for KTM sports cars in Europe. We equip all of their race cars with our transmissions. When that car first came out, we got one here and developed a package for it. Now that's been developed to a different gearbox now because they've gone up in power. They now, their latest sports car, they now run a 5-cylinder engine with more horsepower and that sort of thing. So it doesn't, the old transmission was packaged to fit in a standard car. So the new sports car is slightly larger. So we've gone to a slightly larger transmission. We've also gone through to an electric shift mechanism. So it's basically the sequential camshaft is driven directly by electric motor, which allows for a lot more scope on different shift strategies and things like that. So as far as R&D goes, there's always something happening. For instance, at the moment, getting into the off-road market, we're playing around with torque converters and the systems to control that. So there are, plenty of things always happening. As far as the Corvette goes, we already have a package for, we'll bolt up to that, the engine that the Corvette is using. We just have to see, as far as driveline position and that sort of stuff, whether that needs to be modified for that car. But as I said, we've got basically an application for almost any car in the world, from four-wheel drive Evos and Subarus through to the sports cars in Europe. So it's there's not much we can't actually package and help out a customer with, because as Dana said, everything is customized to every single customer. We build to order, basically.
Very exciting. I think that's what people want, and folks out there on EPARTRADE.com watching along from around the world, club racers, SCCA racers. We've certainly spoken a lot about you guys as the backbone of this industry, and people who go through a lot of parts. Maybe you're not racing professionally, but you're doing it for the love, and you want to have the most track time as is possible. Dana, you mentioned the off-road world and how that is expanding. I'd like you to expand a little bit on that. In tracks, limited, off-road, unlimited. There are just so many different ways that you can go off-road racing.
Yeah, I think most of the off-road stuff that we're starting to get into now is transaxle based. We've had the benefit of working with one particular for several years now here that runs the Best in the Desert series on some of the four-cylinder buggy stuff. So we kind of got our feet wet with our first inline transaxle with a four-cylinder turbo-powered buggy. And we were a little different than many of the ones that are out there, the stalwarts in the business that are in there now. Transaxle-wise, we're a little different. We're a little smaller looking. A lot of people had their doubts about whether it was going to hold up to the shock loads that off-road racing, desert racing puts on gearboxes. But it's been quite good. It worked out quite well. They keep moving up to bigger and bigger vehicles and bigger versions of our gearbox. And like Leigh mentioned, we've got our large series transaxles that are now set up to, it's a 6-speed sequential, but it also has the torque converter involved to dampen some of the shock loads that would normally come back through. So that's, people do that already. We're not innovating that, but that's a new thing for us. A manual racing gearbox with a torque converter on it is something we had done in sports cars. So we have high hopes for that. That should be, I think Leigh was mentioning that should be up in a car running before the end of the year. And then we've got another transaxle families that's even bigger still, with a 12-inch diameter ring gear and that sort of thing that's in the works that we've been. It's been planned for some time. We've been, fortunately and unfortunately, we've been flat out in the filling orders so much that we haven't had as much time as we probably like to continue to develop a new product. But they've managed to fit a lot of stuff in the last 6 months, and progress is being made on the development of the new biggest transaxle that we've got, which is good for some of the really high-powered stuff. So yeah, off-road is again something that we haven't gotten historically too far, other than, like Dakar type, rally type things. We do that regularly, but the desert racing that you see here in the States is fairly new for us. But I think the product will show that it'll be a good choice. We'll be a competitor out there as soon as people start seeing what it can do.
And I think that we're noticing a trend. Here it is again, where, desert racing, you can't be let down by your equipment. Not only do you lose the race, but you're in the middle of nowhere. The challenge of that, like being presented new challenges as someone who, you're the engineering director, you've built your life and your profession around conquering challenges, complicated challenges. So like desert, transaxle, buggies, Baja 1000 type stuff, where these guys are just, racing over the earth, presenting you guys a new challenge. It sounds like the box is impressing people. But talk about you and just, your passion to come to work each day, knowing that you've got to conquer these complex physical challenges.
Well, I've been coming to work here every day for nearly 28 years, so I enjoy it. I started off on the floor as one of the technicians or in the gear cutting section, manufacturing gears, and worked my way up through the company basically. So from being a fitter and turner, I then moved on to basically in the design section and did that for many years, and then eventually got the opportunity to basically start managing the business when the original owner and founder of the business, Hollinger, basically he was getting older and wanted the business to continue. So there's a few of us stepped up to start managing it under his guidance, basically. And yeah, we basically, he passed away 10 years ago, and we've continued the company on from there, basically. I think he'd be very proud of where we've taken it. We've developed a much wider product range in the last 15 years or so. Originally, when we first started out, it was mainly just inline gearboxes for the V8 supercars and things like that, as you said. But that was a very good proving ground. The V8 supercars are a very competitive and tough series, so they the products we had to develop for them had to be very good. They wanted long service life and things like that to make the series more cost effective. And I'll be honest, I think they've taken some backward steps in the recent years because the series is very expensive to run now. But that's motorsport for you. Things don't always go in the correct directions, but
everybody's laughing. Everybody's laughing. Everyone's like smiling. Dana's like, yeah, and Bill's like, yeah.
Look, I mean, as Bill said, motorsport is expensive. It's not something you get into thinking you're going to be able to do it cheaply. But by making some correct decisions, you can make it far more cost effective than what it could be otherwise.
It is my understanding that our NASCAR series is switching to the sequential gear at some point soon. You laugh. What experience can you lay upon us coming out of V8 supercars and have had it for a long time? It's old school technology to you guys, and we've got H pattern. We're about to move away from that. What are we about to experience?
I think. Look, I think it'll change the series quite a lot. The traditional method of transmissions for you guys, I'll be honest, I think it probably was quite a good solution. The transaxle will, in some ways, I think on the road courses and things like that, it'll be a much better option. But for the oval stuff, I think we'll see. We'll have to wait and see how it all pans out. But I think, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how the new series goes. Whether it's more cost effective than the old one, I don't know. I think that has to be seen to be.
Remains to be seen. Bill,
Yes.
Talk to the folks out there as if they are someone coming into your shop who knows about your reputation, who wants you to guide them to the right thing. And you've mentioned, they'll say a company or another company, I've heard of this, or I've read about this, or my buddy's got, or et cetera, and so on. How do you cut through the noise and direct them to, obviously you're here with Hollinger, you're on screen with these guys, you believe in their product and their methods, and obviously their human resources, as we're learning here today. But, what do you say to those people? What is effective to cut through the clutter?
Well, that's just it. Most of the people that come into my shop know my reputation and know my experience, and it comes down to I've been through with Hollinger products. I've been involved in many Daytona 24-hour wins with their gears and the current Porsche gearboxes that we're running, and that's all that engineering and quality that went into those gears that were in those gearboxes still exists in all the products that they have today, and it's even better. And I usually have a pretty pretty easy time convincing people that because of my experience, this is what I recommend, and they usually listen to me. And when I recommend something, and that's the way it goes. And then it's always good. It's always really nice. And a lot of the gearboxes, the transaxles that I purchased from Hollinger, have always. It seems like I haven't done a normal one for the past 3 or 4 that I did with these guys, and we did some really crazy upside down custom bell housing, all-wheel drive, just insane stuff, all-wheel drive in a cup car gearbox, stuff like that. And there's never any pushback like, oh, we really can't do that, really shouldn't, we can't do this, can't do that. It's always positive. The customer wants this, I request it, and those guys do it. It's amazing. So that's one of the nice things with dealing with guys.
You're working them. I like it. I like to hear you gotta push the envelope. Dana, what about that? Customers like Bill coming up, dreaming up stuff as racers are supposed to do. That's why we love to watch them. And you go with the flow.
Absolutely. I think it keeps things interesting when you let people dream up some car concepts and things like that, and because of our, I'd say, relatively unique ability to customize the product, Hollinger's willingness to make changes and learn about the needs in order to engineer the best solution possible. That's always been kind of an exciting part of it. You get to see something really different that you haven't seen before. We've done a couple projects with some high-speed, vehicles in the last year or so. There's some stuff upcoming. We did a really cool project with a company called Bimmer World. James Clay is the guy who owns the company, and he wanted to build a really crazy E36 BMW that has ground effects and a late model GT3 BMW V8 twin turbo engine in it, and it's it makes how much power? It's 1,300 horsepower or something like that, and it's going to be up next week. I think coming up next year, and in the meantime, he's out at Circuit of the Americas for events. He's on social media, so really impressive car. And that was a unique situation. That was one of our transaxles that is actually a front engine vehicle with a transaxle in the back, completely pneumatically shifted. All the clutch and the alternator and everything else is mounted on a gearbox in the back of the car for weight distribution. It's a really interesting project. It came out really well. So there's interesting going on. That's what keeps me coming in.
Well, exactly, and you want that. You don't work in a cubicle. You're living a life where it's a great challenge. All right, so for folks out there that are in this market, in the market for a gearbox, in the market for something that's going to be reliable and not leave them on, on the side of the racetrack or in the desert, and they don't want to take it out and they don't want to make the mistakes that we've learned about here. What's the best way for them to go about contacting you guys and continuing their exploration as to whether or not this is right, and even maybe working on some of those custom solutions or the right shift patterns we were talking about a little bit earlier? Like, where does that journey begin with Hollinger?
Well, as with most, it's something you can hit us up on the internet first, and there's 3 primary locations for Hollinger representation around the world. We have Hollinger Europe, it's based in Germany. We have Hollinger America, based here in California. And of course, headquarters based in Melbourne, Australia. And between the 3 of us, we're almost 24 hours a day reachable. So the contact information for all 3 locations is on each website. So you can, if you get to Hollinger online, you can get to any of us or all 3 of us, whichever is the most convenient for you, whether it's an email or a telephone call. We're here.
Oh, that's great. And we're going to send them your way. Everybody's on EPARTRADE.com. Now, I have to ask this question, though, and this is just me, and I can't change who I am. I've heard it pronounced both ways multiple times by all of you. Which is it? Hollinger or Hollinger?
That one.
Leigh?
Yeah, well, I can't even answer that one because Peter used to say Hollinger and his son says Hollinger, so go for it.
Okay.
Doesn't matter. There's only one L in it, so when you're trying to look for us.
Right. Well, either way, I'm glad we did that, and I was just following your lead, guys, and I appreciate you. You guys have got a great product. You're helping people out there who love motorsport. We appreciate that. Thank you very much for taking part in their EPARTRADE industry week. It has been amazing to learn about your product, and I encourage everybody out there to check you guys out on EPARTRADE.com. Bill, good luck, obviously, in your 24-hour racing, and thank you for what you do. Dana, excellent work fighting through a challenging audio issue. We heard everything. We heard everything. You did good. You were like, well, you were like Lou Gehrig when he gave the speech with the echo in the background, but you fought through it. We really appreciate that. And Leigh, exactly. I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth. And Leigh, thank you very much as well. Excellent job, excellent product. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Joe.
Registering on EPARTRADE is easy. Fill out your name, email, phone number, and create a secure password. Next, select your business type. Choose supplier if you're looking to display products or services and connect with buyers. Choose racing business if you're looking to find new parts and connect with suppliers. Choose race team if you own or are a member of a professional racing team. Begin typing your company name. We most likely already have your company in our database, which you can select from the drop-down. Then, enter your job title. Choose Claim Company if you'll be editing your company profile. Other members of your company can choose Join Company if they'd like to use EPARTRADE as well. You can view and agree to our terms of use here. If you'd like to receive our weekly newsletter, choose Accept. Click Register Now, and your registration will be submitted for approval. You'll need to confirm your email once it goes through. To keep our platform industry only, you'll be approved shortly after. If we require additional proof of business, we'll reach out. Welcome to EPARTRADE.